Open Your Eyes to the Universe is a series of contemporary talks, conversations, open-eyed meditations and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others by sharing their wisdom, their insights and experiences. Now, last month we were speaking with palliative care physician, Associate Professor Roger Cole on healing heart and soul. Roger's conversation with us was pitched at the individual level, the experience of personal grief, personal loss and sadness, which is a journey we all take at some point in our lives. It's a universal experience. And we were conversing with Roger on how we can overcome our vulnerability to loss. Well, tonight we're going to be exploring global loss and the state of being broken at a collective and global level. Our special guest, Gayatri will be conversing with us on the pertinent question, how do we mend humanity's broken heart? Gayatri was born in Guyana and currently lives in New York City, where she's a senior teacher of the Brahma Kumaris worldwide. And she's also the Brahma Kumaris representative at the United Nations. I'm going to take my time in introducing Gayatri to you because in some respects she's a little incognito, and yet her contribution to healing humanity's broken heart is both noteworthy and pioneering. Gayatri is a spiritual educator, a writer, and a speaker. In each of these realms, she's dedicated to exploring the spiritual phenomenon of transformation at both the individual and the collective levels. Since the 1980s, she's served as a representative of the Brahma Kumaris at the United Nations in New York. And in this capacity, her role is to identify areas of UN policies with practical relevance to individual lives, to explore and develop values-based and the spiritual dimensions of these areas, and then to create programs and statements to expand awareness through the Brahma Kumaris grassroots networks in over 120 countries. Gayatri's current focus is on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. She served as a spiritual resource on the spirituality of global transformation and contributed in the development of a concept paper entitled Enhancing Human Flourishing within the 2030 Development Agenda, Spirituality of Global Transformation. Now, this was the result of a 3-year dialogue held with the United Nations Population Fund. In other ways, Gayatri served on the board of directors of Images and Voices of Hope, a fantastic initiative. It's a movement in media based on positive strengths and that focuses on restorative and redemptive narratives. Images and Voices of Hope believes in the power of the media to elicit empathy, build resilience, and connect us across differences with global impact. Gayatri's been a part of Images and Voices of Hope since its inception, working with an organising group on the annual summits, and her role is to focus on integrating the reflective dimension into the conversations and dialogue of the summit. She also contributes to the Global Call of the Time Dialogues, a global leadership forum. And Gayatri spent the last 20 years exploring experiments in silence. Doesn't that sound great? Experiments in silence. And that is the transformational depth of contemplative silence and the impact that this has on the actions we take for world benefit. Gayatri is also a member of the advisory board of Cosmos Journal for Global Transformation. And the mission of the journal is to inform, inspire, and engage individual and collective participation for global transformation and harmony with all life. Now, not surprisingly, Gayatri has co-authored a number of publications. The most recent include The Story of Immortality, about a return to self-sovereignty. And another one, intriguing title, Something Beyond Greatness, Conversations with a Man of Science and a Woman of God. Her more recent published articles include The Feminine Principle, which was published in The Fabric of the Future, Women Visionaries Illuminate the Path to Tomorrow. She authored Dignity, Self-Realization and the Spirit of Service, Principles and Practices of Decent Work, which was published in the Philosophical and Spiritual Perspectives on Decent Work, and that's connected, of course, to the International Labour Office in Geneva. And another publication worth noting is The Spiritual Dimensions of Climate Change, published in Silex. Now, as for me, I know Gayatri is someone with a deep sense of social justice and love for humanity. And in the context of her spiritual contributions to healing our world and mending humanity's broken heart, I'm sure that tonight she has some significant insights to share with us. Now, viewers, as always, we welcome your questions. Thanks to those who've sent them in already. And if you have access to the chat box, then please feel free to write your questions and we'll ask them in the Q&A session later tonight. Well, Gayatri, I know it's only about 5:30 a.m. in the morning for you, and it's evening over here in Australia. And I can remember your fleeting visit to Australia maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So it's a pleasure to have you back in this part of the world. Very warm welcome, Gayatri, back to Down Under.
Thank you, Gabrielle, and for inviting me. And I'm so pleased to be with everyone in the Zoom room. And depending on how many of us are here, it may move from a room to a land in the Zoom land. Well, as you said, it's 5:30 a.m. here in New York, and I'm in the Catskills Mountains, where morning is just about to break. And so it's a beautiful time.
Yeah.
Forgive me for my voice because it's 5:30 in the morning. And so if I sound a little coarse in my voice, it's because of that. Before I begin sharing, I'd like you to join me in a few minutes of reflection. The heart loves silence and solitude. Sit quietly on the seat of the soul in the center of the forehead. Be aware of who you are. You are a being of living light, a soul whose intrinsic virtue is love. Visualize love flowing from the sacred space of the soul. In the solitude of this space, listen to the sound of silence. Hear the whispers of the heart. Thank you. I'm going to start today with the word healing. Healing in all forms come from the heart. And I also want to clarify what I mean when I use the word heart. The heart we all relate to is the important organ of the body, and we know how much care we need to take of our hearts. Diet, exercises, meditation, and a lot more. But the heart that I want to emphasize today is the spiritual heart. This spiritual heart is the core of the self, of the soul. And it is the center of life to everything, life and living. It is from the center of life that love emerges and we connect in relationships. It is from the center of life that the baby connects to his or her mother with trust, soul to soul, heart to heart, eye to eye, and touch to touch. A baby comes into the world trusting that there will be people around to nurture her with love and care and to protect him in a safe environment. The baby's heart opens to new life. Perhaps the UN Declaration on Human Rights captured this moment with its article, all human beings are born free and equal, endowed with reason and conscience. So what has happened between the heart opening to new life and all human beings being born free and equal? There seemed to be a disconnect between the two. Because today humanity's heart is grieving more than ever. Humanity's heart is divided by the many factors, including whom to trust and who not to trust, what is true and what is fake. Humanity's heart is also broken. It is broken by the loss of life, the loss of opportunity, the loss of certainty, and more than ever, the loss of normalcy. And that's why we're looking for a new normal. Humanity's heart is broken by the fragmentation in our families and communities, and of course in our world, that have left us isolated and alone. So whether something happens personally or whether it happens nationally or internationally, it impacts the heart in a way that the heart gets broken. When the heart is divided and broken, there is suffering and pain. And we all know that suffering leads to violence. For instance, the George Floyd case in the USA, in which there was that blatant racial discrimination event. So what should we do with our suffering? COVID-19 is showing us exactly what's on the rise in people's hearts. People are angry, people are afraid, and people are anxious. Racial discrimination has shown its ugly face, touching the implicit memories of the past injustices and reigniting old traumas. To heal and mend the broken heart of humanity, we need to take personal responsibility for our own healing. And to do this, we need to open our spiritual heart, the spiritual heart of the soul, to new insights, and to apply these insights in ways to heal both our souls and our bodies. It is said that grief dwells in the soul and it manifests as trauma in the body. So for healing to take place, it's not just at the heart level, it's not just at the soul level, but it's important to heal the body as well, because most of the anger and anxiety and fear are living in the cells of the body. So making meaning of the heart means that we are able to cultivate a capacity to see with love. Seeing is systemic, and so when I see with love, I see the whole. I see what there is, not based on my selfish interest or my agenda, but I'm seeing the whole. so that I can input so that the whole gets the benefit. I'd like to quote from an author, Parker Palmer. Many of you may know him. And he has put this meaning making of the heart in very beautiful words, very succinct, but very pointed. The heart points to a larger way of knowing, of receiving and reflecting on our own experience that goes deeper than the mind alone can take us. The heart is where we integrate the mind and intellect with the rest of our faculties, such as emotion, imagination, and intuition. It is where we find the courage to act on what we know. This would be very important for those at the UN. The capacity to make meaning of the complexities of our experiences and cultivates in us a drive to shape our destiny is what is essential right now. So how do we mend humanity's broken heart? How do we heal our own hearts one at a time and be aware that when I heal my own heart, I'm contributing to mending the broken heart of my family or of my community or of humanity? There can be discomfort in healing, but choosing not to heal can result in a severe or more severe discomfort. To heal with discomfort, we need to recognize the power of the spiritual heart and to develop new habits of the heart. We should develop insightful ways for engaging our hearts as a human family at both individually and collectively levels. So what are these habits, these new habits of the heart that we should inculcate in order to mend this broken heart of humanity? Habit 1, the spiritual heart is the source of loving kindness and compassion. We need self-compassion first. Self-compassion removes that which decreases our capacity to care and have compassion for others. It uplifts in us a special kind of kindness. Habit number 2, the new habit for the heart. The spiritual heart can see both the darkness and the light. The soul's ability to discern is a function of the intellect. However, only when the intellect operates on the basis of love can it discern darkness from light, truth from falsehood, right from wrong. Third habit, new habit of the heart. The spiritual heart has the creative art of transforming. It transforms tensions and stress into capacity and resilience. And when I say transformation here, I mean transformation as a way. So it's a transformative way. When we start a journey of healing our hearts, we encounter pain. And we can look at pain in 2 ways. Pain can be a transformative way to bring out the best in us, or pain can take us on a downward spiral of blame and denial, taking us into parts of ourselves that are most wounded. Not to deny the pain, the transformative ways not to deny the pain, but to heal by tapping into the innate wisdom of that spiritual heart, of the soul, And this requires that creativity of the heart. Habit number 4. The spiritual heart's knowing is incredible. And this is something very, very beautiful to explore and discover how incredible the spiritual heart's knowing is. Once we're in touch with our deepest, most feelings, and not to be afraid of our feelings, we are able to sense what's going on in the body. Grief is in the heart, and trauma is in the body. Healing is about the soul's relationship with its own body, and of course, the bodies of others. When there is a problem with the body, we need to engage with curiosity rather than succumbing to fear. I think that this is one of the lessons of COVID-19, how to keep both the body and the soul safe and protected. We have to remember that we are souls in bodies in order to reclaim this important relationship between the soul and the body. A lot of our emotions, feelings, and thoughts of grief are stuck in the cells of our bodies, causing trauma. After the George Floyd case, there's a group that formed a healing room here in New York. And in that healing group, they came together because they realized that there were a lot of implicit pain and hurt, which suddenly emerged. And they knew that spirituality on its own wasn't going to do it, because it is as if, this was where the distinction came, the grief was in the soul, but the trauma was in the body. And here in the Brahma Kumaris, we say that body consciousness is the first vice. So that meant that whatever started off this downward spiral of the broken relationships was because of a discrimination on the basis of the body. So this is a very important part. I'd like now for us to meditate a little bit, just to reflect on what I've just shared with you, because they are deep concepts and they're talking about the heart and drawing our attention to the fact that there are habits in the heart that, if they're not changed, the mind and the intellect will not work in a way that would make the right decisions, not just for those that I care about, but for the whole of humanity. So this meditation is about looking at the whole of humanity, but also looking inside of myself to see what are these habits in my heart, and to feel things that are there. It is almost as if it is a way to start journaling about this, and thinking about what are the old habits in my heart and what are the new habits in my heart. And to see the distinction in a way that we can mend the heart of humanity by taking responsibility for my own. So remember, the spiritual heart works best in silence and solitude. I'd like you to quietly turn inside. Turn inside the core center of the soul, which I call the spiritual heart, where you feel things, you experience things. Feel that space as your heart. Now that you are feeling that space in your heart, remember a time when you felt free and happy, hopeful and confident. It could be a childhood experience, a special time with a friend, a moment of victory. Notice the feelings of happiness, light, love, laughter. Now, allow your inner eye to look into your heart to see if there is an intruder in the form of an old habit blocking your heart. This intruder could be a person, an emotion, a memory. Don't be afraid. This is an opportunity to reclaim your heart. In silence, become aware of what's there in your heart. Remain in silence and in solitude in this sacred space, the core of the soul, where the spiritual heart exists. From this space, focus on God, the divine, the source. With love coming from your spiritual heart. Draw on this love. Feel God's love flowing into you. This elevated connection with the higher power empowers the heart continuously with pure feelings. And the heart is strengthened and the heart feels the safety, the protection. Let me hold this connection for a minute. Remember, the heart feels safe. In silence and solitude. Thank you. There is a saying, and the saying is from Dadi Janki. Everything starts with the heart, she says. Now, Dadi Janki left the body in March this year, and she was 104 years old. And she was always focused on transformation. And she said the most beautiful things in very short sentences or slogans. So here's one: everything starts with the heart. I remember being in Durban in 2001, attending a conference on against racism, all forms of racism. And at that conference, I was sitting in the conference room. And it was at that conference when the negotiations broke down and a few countries walked out. And so with that happening, of course, they were main countries. So the discussions came to an abrupt end. And of course, they had to renegotiate with them to get them back into the room. As I was looking at that, I realized that there was like a volcanic eruption in me. And I began to say, oh, where is this coming from? I thought that after so many years of living a spiritual life, you would think that I know how to transform myself and transform all those implicit memories that were inside of me. Where are they coming from? And I remember being very disturbed about the whole thing, first from a personal level, but looking at what happened in a conference room of the UN and the impact that it was having on me, I was quite intrigued at one level, but quite disturbed at another. And so I came and I asked Adi Janki, I told her the story and I asked her, why did that happen? So right here at Peace Village, she was here at that time, and we have a little pond on the property. And so she took me walking around the pond. And she says, well, what efforts did you make? I said, well, I made a lot of efforts on my mind and my intellect, and I can understand things better, and I can think about things in a better way. And she says, okay, do you know what transformation is? She said. And I looked at her because the question just came out like that. And it had nothing to do with, I thought I understood transformation. And there she was asking me. And I said, Daddy, you tell me. And she says, true transformation is when you transform your feelings about something. It's when you transform your heart about something. Otherwise, your mind will tell you that this is what you know and what you understand and what you can do in any circumstance. But she says, if you haven't transformed your heart or your feelings, what happens is that the feelings will emerge and deceive you. And that's what happened to you. So this sentence, when she says everything starts with the heart, I would also say add to it, and everything ends with the heart. And so I'd like to take you through a process that I have been part of, and I found it extremely useful in looking at how transformation happens at the level of feelings. First of all, the heart, with those 4 beautiful habits of the heart, what would result is that the heart would take in the happiness and the love and the peace and the joy. But the heart also takes in the sorrow and the guilt and all forms of this of prejudices and biases that lead to discriminations. All of that live in the heart. So these feelings that live in the heart shape our awareness, they shape our attitude, and they shape our vision, which is like these, and of course the action, but this is the spiritual trajectory of the soul. And the heart works through this spiritual trajectory. So in order to change anything, I have learned, is that you have to clean up your heart. And this is what many people don't do. You go into places, and I would now, because I represent the BKs at the UN, you go into the UN when you could have gone in, and you see everything they're doing is just from the mind and the intellect, and just from an agenda. And where is love in all of this? And so this is why I think that it cannot be done, I suppose, in a conference setting. And this is why the focus is on to do it at an individual level, this cleaning up of the heart. Because once the individual cleans up his heart and knows what he's standing for, there is a success or a victory in that. And we've seen it in Gandhi, we've seen it in Mandela, we've seen it in Martin Luther King, we've even seen it in Mother Teresa. These are all people who are no longer here, but who stood for something they wanted, not something they were against. And I suppose because they had this generative love coming from that spiritual heart, they managed to get a success that would not have been there had they not come from the position of that spiritual heart. So and they were individuals. So as individuals, we have to clean up our hearts by dealing with the issues that are in our hearts and the feelings, by taking what we need and placing a full stop to that which we don't need. Now, this is a spiritual art. This would be the creativity of the heart. How do we do this? When the heart is true and clean, the attitude and the vision become pure, and the actions that result, I would call it poetic. So to cultivate new habits of the heart, we need to clean the heart out of its old habits. And for this, we need the spiritual tools of insight, honesty, determination, and faith. The process of cleaning the heart or clearing the heart of old habits and inculcating the new habits, I'd like to share some of this with you now. So at least you have something that you can experiment with. So I'm recommending you, when you have some time, and I'm sure many of you have that time because you are in lockdown still or social distancing. And so you could take time to do this. And what I'm recommending is that you do journaling by writing a letter to your heart. And this is what you'd say. Dear heart, I know that I'm innately light and loving, happy, free, brave, compassionate, and you can add whatever else you want to. You would then say, I see that this old habit somehow made a steady place in my heart. So you're identifying the old habit in your heart. And then you'll say, I know why you came. So if we identify that old habit, we will also be able to see why it came, because the new habit of the heart is what we're inculcating. It sees both, the spiritual heart sees both the light and the darkness. And then you'll say, but now I'm wiser, more experienced, and able to handle things that might have upset me and derailed me before. So I'm wiser, I'm able to handle things, I'm able to look and accept it first and then handle them, and knowing that they would have upset you. And then you would say, if you found blame in your heart for the old habit, now in the heart has the habit of blaming. And this is what you're seeing humanity is doing. With COVID-19, everyone is blaming the other for it. So in the heart, it's this old habit of blaming. So what you say when you have found that blame, you would say, I forgive whoever it is, whether it is COVID-19 or whether it's an individual or whether it's a nation or whether it's a leader. You have to go through the process of forgiving, because that's forgiveness also lies in the spiritual heart. So I forgive X, whoever that is, completely for what he or she did, and release him or her from any responsibility, because I know that they couldn't fulfill it. So if my heart was holding on to this blame that someone didn't fulfill my responsibility, now the wisdom in me will say they couldn't do it. So then I release them from it. And so that blame would be removed as an old habit. If you found guilt in your heart, you should add this. Apologize for whatever I thought or said to you in that moment that gave you pain. So the guilt would be, I did something wrong to someone else and now I want to remove it. So I'm apologizing. In the moment, given what I knew, I did what I thought I had to do. I see now that it may have caused harm, and I apologize completely. So forgive yourself and then experience your own forgiveness. So one is forgiving the other, but then it's also forgiving yourself. And then the other is when that bad habit emerges in any form or shape, you would say, I want you to leave my heart and never return. Please leave now. With your eye of insight, walk this old habit out of your heart. And with deep commitment that you are finished with it and will not allow it to come back into your heart. And now, fill your heart with love and light, which can either come welling up from the natural wellspring of your inner love and light, or by connecting with God's love and light. And again, let God's love pour into your heart in order to heal it. Sit in the fullness of this whole experience and see clearly in your heart the truth of who you are. You're beautiful, you're good, you're kind, you're courageous. Hold on to that feeling in the spiritual heart. Then observe which new habit has formed in the heart. Was it, my spiritual heart is now the source of loving kindness and compassion? Or was it, my spiritual heart can see both the darkness and the light? Or was it, my spiritual heart has the creative art of transforming? Or was it, my spiritual heart's knowing is incredible? Or you own your own observation of a new habit could be there. And so finally, I'd like to say that at this time of healing and mending humanity's broken heart, it is important for us first to mend our own hearts. And I wanted to focus on this, even though my bio was all about the UN. And I focus on it because when people from the UN come to learn meditation or come to find out how they can be more calm, how they could be more peaceful just for a chat, this is what we bring them to, because we realize that there's only one way to mend, and it has to be within your own heart. And I'll share one story. I was in a room of a group of people who were all suffering from some kind of disabled illness, not mental, but physical. But of course, it impacts you mental too. And in this, it was a Zoom room, and the doctor, the psychologist, called me in just to listen to them so I can have an idea of what's going on with them. And as I listened, one of the persons, they were all taking care of people who were disabled, but these were the caregivers of the disabled people that they were living with. And one person, he was a surgeon, retired, and he said to me, you know what? I want to change my name. I no longer like my name. And I said, why? And he said, because all day my wife keeps calling my name, and I hear it so many times in her voice, and I know that in her calling me how I have to respond. And I suddenly have such a dislike for my name. And then I realized that he, of course, wanted to give so much of himself, so much of his heart, so much of his care to his wife, that he's forgotten how to take care of himself. And so all I could have said to him was, just take a little bit of time and not feel guilty about taking the time away, and go out, sit somewhere. And I gave him this process. Reflect on a few of these points and see how it will help you. Because obviously what he had to remove from his heart was guilt. The guilt, feeling guilty about giving himself time to do a bigger task. And so healing the heart of you, the wounded heart, the broken heart of humanity requires us to start with ourselves. Om Shanti.
Just reflecting on some of your talk, Gayatri, some lovely points coming through about the connection between healing my heart myself and the importance of that. So the connection between suffering and violence, that when we suffer, it erupts as violence. And then when I heal my own heart, I can see with love. I think that's just beautiful. And I love those points too, the connections between when I heal my own heart, then I'm contributing to healing the heart of my family, my community, and humanity. The four new habits of the spiritual heart, they were gorgeous. The spiritual heart is the source of loving kindness and self-compassion. Yeah, the number one habit. And then the second one, the spiritual heart can see both the darkness and the light. And the spiritual heart has the creative art of transforming. That was a very deep point I found. And then the spiritual heart knows the relationship between the soul and the body, and its body consciousness, the result of that then brings in discrimination on the basis of the body. I really appreciated your little quote from Daddy Yankee, everything starts with the heart. And I love the way that you processed that in conversation with her around, true transformation is when you transform your feelings and your heart together. And the way that you added to that by saying, and everything ends with the heart. So some lovely things there, Gayatri. It was very deep, a very deep sharing from you. Thank you for that. Lovely. We do have some questions here. Are you happy to take a few?
Yes, once you have the time.
Yeah, let's go for them. They're coming in different categories, but I'm going to focus on the ones around the UN because we don't often get a chance to have a conversation with someone who works at the UN. Here's the first one. There's a lot of concern around the UN Sustainable Development Agenda and population decrease strategies. Can you cast any light on these concerns that people have and confirm the United Nations actions are for the good?
Well, speaking to me as the BK UN rep at the UN since 1980, I would say the UN is for the good. But remember, the UN is made up of member states, governments, and the Secretary General really facilitates whatever those member states want to do or not want to do. And so I feel first, the Sustainable Development Goals are there. And what it does, the 17 goals, it shows us that this is the calamity that we are in. They're all, each goal has targets under them, and it really expands on the world. This is systemically falling apart. And of course, the ones who suffer the most from the systemic falling are human beings. However, I think that the Sustainable Development Goals will not survive in and of itself because they're goals. In other words, they would, when I say survive, they wouldn't be accomplished in 2030 unless they look at the Sustainable Development Agenda. And when they look at the whole agenda, what they are saying, and if they manage to do that, I think there's hope, that foundational to the agenda is transformation. But transformation of what? And that is the key question for me. Is it a change of minds? If you change minds, that would be very temporary. But it's got to be a transformation of consciousness. And that is why we did those meetings at the UN looking at transformation, the spiritual phenomenon of transformation, and how if that doesn't happen, then it's very unlikely that the goals would be attained by 2030. And I don't think it would, because COVID-19 has actually put the UN in shutdown. And what happens now is that I think the goals are going at a slower pace, and people are more caught up with the COVID and less so with, accomplishing those goals. But it is a huge task. And I think if there isn't a transformation of consciousness, it would be like the Millennium Development Goals that then turned into the Sustainable Development Goals. It won't happen.
Can you just expand a little bit on that connection between consciousness and transformation, and why that change in consciousness is so critical to achieving most of the UN goals?
Well, the consciousness has to be that we're working for the whole of humanity. We're not just working for a part of humanity. That's the first consciousness I feel that has to happen. And the UN is a global forum. And of course, everyone coming in has their own little vested interest, depending on the needs of their country and the agenda of their governments. And so that consciousness has to change, that at the UN, when we come in to cooperate and to collaborate and to do things together for the whole of humanity. And this is why, they usually call on the richer countries to help the poorer countries, because if that doesn't happen, if they don't see those poorer countries as their younger brothers and sisters, then what would happen, it would be the survival of the fittest and the dominant force of the rich. And I think that consciousness has to change. It has to go back to what I'm calling the spiritual heart. They have to return to a place of conscience, and that conscience lives in the spiritual heart. And so the transformation of consciousness comes from returning to a conscience, because I don't feel just political will would do it. I think they have to return to a conscience in the spiritual heart of individuals and of humanity, to see that if one fails, it's just a matter of time for the other. And so there is no win-win situation here. And so I think the consciousness at that level has to change, seeing the world as one, seeing humanity as one family, and valuing each and everyone's life. Because in the preamble of the Charter, it states very clearly, one, of course, is to stop succeeding generations from the scourge of war. But what is most profound in the whole Charter, but is in the preamble, is to reaffirm faith in the dignity and worth of the human person. Mm-hmm. Now that means all peoples. It doesn't mean just one set of people in the world. So I think if they would go back and just reflect on that one sentence, I feel that there could be a little shift in their consciousness.
Mm. It's a little bit like the missing ingredient.
That's right.
Yeah. Here's another question that's come in. Hi, Gayatri. I've been involved with the Brahma Kumaris for 18 years now, and I'm looking forward to your talk. So that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. However, I'm extremely suspicious of Agenda 21-30-50. I have friends who have researched, and one wrote a book on it, Behind the Green Mask. What are your thoughts on this being an agenda to enslave humanity by a small group of people?
You know, I think the spiritual laws won't allow that. Politically, it might be possible, but I tend not to look at things through the lens of politics and through the lens only of the secular frame or the secular paradigm. I tend to look at things more through from a spiritual paradigm and through a spiritual lens. And I feel that, as I said earlier, a small group of people cannot control a larger group, because there is going to be an imbalance, and that imbalance is going to not be something that's successful for the ones who are trying to do that. And so even at the UN, like the United States are saying that they're coming out of WHO. They have cut the funding for UNFPA. And they're gradually moving and becoming more and more unilateral. And because they feel maybe that they have the power to do that. But I think that there are people, even in the United States, who think differently and who will, if given a chance, I think could make a major difference to not let that happen. And if it does happen, I think it would lead to major destruction.
Thanks for that, Gayatri. There's a couple of questions here that are moving more into the personal terrain. When you feel your heart go out for someone who doesn't reciprocate, how can I use the knowledge of karma to heal? And another one that goes hand in hand with that, so I'll pitch that one as well. And of course, you can separate them if you wish. Can you explain karma? I hear it being used punitively. It doesn't sound right to me. I think we're all in this together. So what's the difference between individual karma and collective karma? So a couple of questions coming in here about action.
Okay. Well, collective karma is COVID.
Right, sure, yeah.
Right? Because karma is, as it says, what goes around comes around. What you sow, so shall you reap. And so, but it is not, I'll try to combine both. It is not just a karma that's punitive. Karma is a word, as soon as you hear it, it means, that, oh, you suffered for that, or there was a punishment for that. But karma is a philosophy. Karma is a whole body of knowledge that, if understood, could change the dynamic of living, of life and living. Karma is not just action. Karma has a trajectory. So there's the outer action that I do in the world, but what motivated that action? What stimulated that action? Was it just I'm reacting to what's happening in the world or happening in that relationship? No, there's a trajectory that goes with it. And the spiritual trajectory that we talk about is awareness, attitude, vision, and action. So before the action actually was done, this spiritual trajectory, something happened there. And so I feel that we need to understand the fullness of karma, the whole philosophy, because it is, if understood, we would be able to change individually the trend of our actions in terms of what we're doing, because we will have a different awareness. We will know that my awareness, my attitude, my vision or perception matter before I do that action. So I will be like a reflective person. And this is why, they're calling on us now. And I think it's very connected to karma, to be more contemplative people. Because when you're contemplative, you kind of look on the inside before you look on the outside. And so you would then be able to adjust your inner being to face what's happening on the outside. And so that individually, if understood, you would be able to make a change in the direction of your karmas. Collectively is, I think we live in, because we live in this general sense of ignorance of the impact of our actions on the world that we live in. We just go about doing, survival of the fittest, winner takes all, abusing the environment. There's always, will be there, these things will always happen. And so when we live that way, what I call the ignorance of the consequences, then we're doing it collectively. So whatever would be the impact of that would come back to us collectively. So this is why I say COVID is one such thing, because they don't know what it is. They cannot find a vaccine, but where did it come from? So this blame game is going on. But if we look at it through spiritual lens, we ask ourselves the question, is it something that we collectively did that caused something like this, and is asking of us to change the directions of our actions in relation to the environment, in relation to our relationships with one another? Then we have to look at it at that level too. We just can't live in the fear that I'm going to be affected by it. But I also have to look, what are the inner changes? So I feel one is karma is understood as a settlement, which people may call punitive, but it's not. It's just a settlement. You did something that you were indebted to, and now you have to settle it. But karma is also a fortune. It is through actions that your fortune gets created. And so when I understand how I could contribute to creating fortune rather than contribute to settling something that I have to repay for, because every karma has a consequence, and every karma has a cause. And so looking at the cause and the consequence of karma, I would then be able to use karma to create fortune and not to settle debts. Mm. And the other one, could you repeat it about relationships?
Sure, it's going into that more personal, less global component. And it's saying things like, the question is, when you feel your heart go out for someone who doesn't reciprocate, how can I use knowledge of karma to heal?
Well, the karma will tell you that if someone isn't reciprocating your feelings for him or her, it means that you have to be detached from yourself, in the sense, what am I feeling for this person? I know it's good. I know that it is kind, compassion, whatever, it's pure. But the detachment is to observe why the person isn't responding in the way you would like them to. Sometimes we use this word detachment in a way that people don't like. But detachment is really karmically to take stock of the reality of what is taking place in the relationship, without judgments, without pointing a finger, without feeling lesser than. That's why the person isn't responding. And so that detachment lets me first look at myself and look at my feelings for the person, and then observe why the person isn't responding. And then I will know that maybe in this relationship, this person does not feel the same way I feel for them. And in that moment, you could either turn away and say, well, I'm not going to waste my time with this person. I would prefer not to do that. But if you understand the fortune of the karma here, this person became a catalyst for you to feel something that maybe you would have never felt had that person responded to your feelings for them. And so the fortune of your karma is not to devalue your feelings for the person, but to just remove the person away from the feeling and own the feelings and say, these are my feelings, and these feelings I can give to the world. I can serve. I can do so many things with those feelings, but don't devalue it, running after devaluing yourself and devaluing your feeling. And I wouldn't say running after them, because that's not what I mean. I mean that if that person, even though they haven't reciprocated to your feelings, something were to happen to them and they need your compassion and your kindness and your love, you would be the first there to give it to them, because it becomes unconditional and it isn't conditioned by that person.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gayatri. You mentioned earlier the awareness, attitude, vision, and action. And here's the question, and it's probably going to be our final question because of time. And it's how can we be aware all the time with our thoughts all the time, particularly in difficult situations? We forget about the awareness and negative thoughts start to flow in the mind. So how can I control that?
Okay, I'm going to start something that maybe you will have to finish, Gabrielle. But I always say that there's a lot of emphasis on thoughts. And thoughts have become something that, connected to the mind. So the mind actually is where the thoughts are. But my thoughts shouldn't create my awareness. Because my thoughts, my mind is very connected to my senses and is very connected to the world outside. So if I depend on who I am just based on my thoughts, based on what the mind is creating, then I am going to not be able to have the true awareness of myself. But awareness is deeper. Awareness is that question of who I am is where the awareness starts. So who I am, the answer to that will come from what consciousness you're in. So the awareness emerges from the consciousness. And so that consciousness goes beyond just thinking about yourself. But this is one, I think the fourth spiritual, the fourth new habit of the heart is that there's a special knowing in that spiritual consciousness. And so it moves beyond thoughts. It's a realization, it's a knowing that emerges out of, we'll call it your subconscious, or in the Brahma Kumaris, we call it the sanskaras. And so it's a little bit like, I think I love you. And then tomorrow, oh, I don't love you because I've changed my mind. So those are thoughts. But if there's true love in my awareness, then I will say, I am love. I'm not thinking I'm love. I know there's that deeper knowing that my original intrinsic self emerges in my consciousness and gives me the awareness of who I am.
Yeah, that's lovely. It's a big topic, isn't it? And it's something that we could almost have a special episode on of Youniverse just on that aspect of, and that connection between consciousness, attitude, awareness, vision, and action. But look, that's great. Thank you, Gayatri, for all of those responses to the questions. There's a couple more here, but I might send them to you, and perhaps if we've got the email addresses, we'll be able to give a response to those people who we haven't had time to ask those questions. But we'd like to invite you all into a meditation now with Gayatri. We're playing a meditation commentary from the Healing Heart and Soul CD, and it's a meditation about healing the world. The words were written by Margaret Pinkerton, and it's spoken by Carmen Warrington. Now, look, if for those viewers who may be unfamiliar with Raj Yoga meditation, well, you'll be pleased to know it's a very easy way to meditate. We just use the power of our thoughts to take us into an experience of our natural inner qualities. So first of all, just sit comfortably, and we'll play the commentary, and just allow yourself to become absorbed in what's being spoken. Allow yourself to feel and experience the words that are being spoken in the commentary. So let's begin.
In my mind, I see before me the globe of the world. I allow my heart and soul to become unlimited. And I tune into the state of my world. My world is crying out for peace. Especially the many souls who are enduring war or natural calamity. My world is desperate for joy. especially those who are suffering from disease or emotional trauma. My world is crying out for love. With my strength of spirit, I send to the world the light and energy of peace. With my loving heart, I surround my world with loving feelings and good wishes. With the conviction of pure values, I create a sincere wish for us all to live and work together in a loving community, living in the highest spiritual values of respect and cooperation. With my generous heart and pure spirit, I unite with the divine presence and love of God. Together, we bless our world. I sense God's peace and love passing through me and caressing the world, nurturing every soul, so that they can restore their own purity, peace, and power. In my mind, I see a joyful world. A world full of peace and love. A world without sorrow, where there is only the exchange of love and respect. I believe in the possibility of such a world. A our world will once again shine with grace. I recognize that I play a part in bringing this world into being. I keep love and respect shining in my heart always. I keep peace and truth in my spirit forever.
And, that was a very inspiring and visionary meditation. So thank you, viewers, for co-creating a world of harmony in that meditation together. And thanks too for your questions. And now just love to thank Gayatri. It's been wonderful having you with us, Gayatri. It's not often that we actually get to listen to someone sharing their spiritual insights and work at the United Nations. And I really appreciated and loved the way that you spoke so candidly and gave us examples and new ways of looking at things. And you spoke respectfully with the warmth of someone who really truly cares for humanity. And I thank you for your dedication to this. And so on behalf of the viewers, our thanks, our love, and our blessings to you. So I'd like now just to move into letting you know about how you can get hold of some of Gayatri's work. You can find some of her work that she's been involved in creating at our online bookshop, Eternity Inc. The Story of Immortality is available as a beautiful tabletop book or audio book CD set, and it's now on sale with 60% off. So the Story of Immortality takes the reader by the hand and invites you to find the answers to your deepest questions, such as what should we be doing at this time? What's the nature of the soul? What or who is ultimately governing us? And how can we be at peace and happy in a world in transition? Is karma working for or against us? And some of these we've had time to touch on tonight, but if you want to go into that in more detail, check out the book. Another book that she's been involved with is called Living Our Values, and it sheds light on the need for a radical shift in our consciousness to return to values which can, support a fairer, a greener, a more peaceful world. And we're undoubtedly living in one of the most exciting and challenging times in the history of the world, and there's much uncertainty. So this book offers practical tools for personal empowerment and change. And they're on sale online at the moment at Eternity Inc. with a 60% reduction, and the sale ends on the 20th of August. And as always, if you'd like to learn Raj Yoga meditation online and free of charge, then visit our website for something special near you. That's brahmakumaris.org.au. And finally, I'd like to tell you about our next episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe. Denise Lawrence will join Youniverse on Saturday evening, 26th of September, and she'll be sharing her insights with us on the art of internal balancing. Denise is an author, a broadcaster, and an international speaker on Raj Yoga meditation, spirituality, and related subjects, and she's been doing this since 1974. Please note that the starting time for our next episode on the 26th of September is back to the usual time, beginning at 6 p.m. AEST and finishing at 7:30 p.m. So it's time now to say goodbye. Thanks for joining us and thanks for your questions. We look forward to being with you next month, 26th of September, 6 o'clock. And until then, experiment with how you contribute to healing humanity's broken heart and be part of global change for a better world. See you next month. Take care. Om Shanti.